Welcome back to Candid Conversations with Jonathan Youssef, where we talk openly and honestly about life and faith. Today I'm talking to Dr. Katie McCoy, respected author, speaker, and founder of Blonde Orthodoxy, an online resource dedicated to helping Christians think biblically about womanhood and gender. Katie serves as the director of women's ministry at Texas Baptists and holds a PhD in systematic theology from Southwestern Seminary, where she also served as faculty. Dr. McCoy's most recent book, To Be a Woman: The Confusion Over Female Identity and How Christians Can Respond, addresses cultural gender confusion from a biblical, compassionate perspective. Her research bridges theology, justice for women in the Old Testament, and the intersection of faith and contemporary gender ideology. Before we jump in, a quick reminder, we want to serve you better. So please take our Candid Listener Survey. It takes just a few minutes and helps us shape future content that you care about. The link is in today's show notes. Katie, thank you for taking the time to join us on Candid Conversations.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
For listeners who maybe don't have familiarity around your works, we're going to talk a little bit about some other things that you're working on and doing. Tell us a little bit of growing up, and then what kind of drew you into writing and speaking about theology and culture and gender specifically.
Yeah, I was a pastor's kid growing up. I grew up a lot in St. Louis. That was kind of my high school and college years. Really loved that. And like you, I know you'll understand, you get a different picture of the church and the purpose of the church from growing up with parents in ministry. And the Lord used that in my life a lot. I felt a call to ministry shortly after college, went to seminary in Texas. And stayed there for most of my adult life. Recently moved to Atlanta, where I'm working on behalf of some different ministry initiatives in the cultural engagement space. But it's funny when people ask, how did you come to start writing on this? I honestly fell into it. I was writing and teaching in kind of that feminist history space and trying to critique it from a Christian worldview lens. And at the time, the transgender conversation, it was a few stories on the fringe. It was a couple of very odd, this is so unusual, I don't know what to make of this, but it's very extreme.
What's the timeline of that? What kind of
That
time
would have
period?
been probably 2014.
Which is crazy to think.
2013, 2014. Yeah. So really 10, 12 years ago, you know, we heard, I think the biggest story was a boxer, professional female boxer that was fighting in a boxing match with a biological male, and I think it shattered her eye socket. I mean, she had horrible injuries. And I remember talking about it with my students and saying, this is the full circle of feminism, because really it's the same ideas, just kind of gone full circle now. Critical gender theory. But it was kind of like in this abstract sense. Then 2020 happened, and it was already kind of brimming underneath the surface with different celebrities maybe who came out as non-binary, different ideas that were hitting more mainstream, maybe characters on TV shows or movies. And then all of a sudden we are seeing this explosion of gender dysphoria. Especially among young girls, to the point that researchers, sociologists, mental health professionals are having to make up terms to try to keep up with it, to try to understand what is going on. And so I thought that I had a strong foundation to write this book. And it turns out I had about a pinky finger's worth of research, because I got into it and it's like, this is overwhelming. It's huge. It's so vast. And part of why it's vast, Jonathan, is because it affects nearly every area of our lives. Our sense of who we are within ourselves, our relationships, how we relate to society, our place in society. And it makes sense why there is such a battle, a deep spiritual battle over this, because of not only the damage it does to people in God's image, but the disruption it causes to everything that God designed gender difference, male and female difference, to reflect.
Yeah. I think we know the answer is it's an identity confusion. It's a lack of having a foundation of basic understanding, creation of male, female, and these sorts of things. But I wonder, in your research, like, how do you trace this back? Because it's funny, you had mentioned how this was sort of the full repercussions of feminism taken to its logical ends, I suppose. From a sociological perspective, was it like this preceded this, which then led to that and that and that? How like where? I mean, we could go all the way back to Genesis for the origin of this
Right,
story,
right.
but to bring
It's
it
true.
into that's right. But to bring it into kind of the modern context, like help us understand how did it get to this? Where right, we're talking about 12 years ago. It was not even a blip, not even a news
Right.
article, really.
Right. Karl Truman is kind of the go-to on how to understand how we got here
Yeah.
philosophically, historically. And the best analogy I have for it could be like a big pot of soup. It's just this huge pot, and into this pot have gone all these ideas about post-Christianity, post-modernism, expressive individualism being a huge part of that,
Mm-hmm.
social media and technology,
Mm-hmm.
intersectionality.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, people attempting to not only define themselves, but carve out their sense of worth
Yeah.
among other people
Yeah.
according to the sociological demographics that they inhabit or don't
Right.
inhabit.
Right.
And you put all of that together, add the
Hypersexualized,
politicization. Yeah, exactly. The
hypersexualized culture
politicization
too.
of sex,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Hypersexualization, the pornography industry. There's so much you can throw into this big
Mm-hmm.
pot of soup. It simmers for a few decades,
Mm.
and this is what we're serving Gen Z. And then telling them that you can be whoever you want to be, and anybody that's telling you different, whether that's religion, your parents, your country, or your own body, is somehow oppressive
Mm.
and it's something to overthrow and resist, buck against.
Yeah.
And no wonder this generation is not only gender confused, but has just an epidemic level of mental health issues. And there's even research talking about kind of the chicken and the egg. What happened first, the gender dysphoria or the mental health issues? Overwhelmingly, it's at least a coterminous thing, but so many times it's anxiety and depression. The gender dysphoria is a side effect, especially
Mm-hmm.
among teenagers
Mm-hmm.
that had no previous gender incongruence.
Mm-hmm.
And no wonder they're trying to answer major existential questions about who they are, even how they can relate to and understand themselves, with nothing but their feelings to guide them.
Yeah.
It's a travesty, it's a disservice, it's really an injustice
Yeah.
to an entire generation
Yeah.
that we have, as a culture, not only allowed these ideas to take hold, but allowed the medical experimentation
Mm-hmm.
on children out of vulnerable kids who needed therapy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I've had some friends on the podcast in the past who have said very similarly that a number of the children that they've worked with or have been with some other professional, the questions and the identity and the confusion eventually kind of settle out and move on.
Yeah.
It's the hyper activism of the parents or some adult intruding into the child's life and insisting this, what you have said, must be true, and let's, use medicine and intervention and all these sorts of things. I mean, I've heard someone say that, the lawsuits that'll come out after all this
yes.
could be pretty devastating.
Very much. Very much.
It's interesting. I wonder if you could walk me through this, the idea that this is the logical ends of feminism, because I think of someone like JK Rowling, who is a huge defender of feminism, but absolutely has put her foot down on the transgender issue. She doesn't even hold a biblical view of homosexuality. She tends to side that way, but she's been totally cast out into the darkness when it comes to trans issues. So help me navigate how that is a logical ends, how the trans movement is really the logical ends of that.
Well, you mentioned JK Rowling. She's been on the front lines of being called what's called a TERF, which is apparently one of the highest insults, but now
Wow.
people wear it as a badge.
Okay.
Trans exclusionary radical feminist is what that
Wow.
stands for.
Wow.
Trans exclusionary radical feminist. So a few years ago, especially, you would hear, people jab this at JK Rowling, you TERF, and it was supposed to, it's this huge, almost a slur, and it's supposed to be this shameful moniker that people now wear, like this, sure, I'm a TERF, trans exclusionary radical feminist. She's not alone. There was a radical feminist Australian writer who was sounding the alarm on transgender identity, and what these TERFs would say is that the very nature of feminism presupposed that your biological self was predictive of your social self. So in other words, if you're born female, therefore you are in an oppressed class.
Okay.
No matter what your actual experiences are. And then what we saw, you go back to the 1970s, the consciousness raising exercises, the metastasization of radical feminism at the university level.
Right.
And generally it was either you have your consciousness raised and you understand that you are oppressed, or you are suppressing the truth about yourself and we need to liberate you from your own experiences, and that way you can recognize the oppressed status that you have.
Right.
If you refuse, then you're just Phyllis Schlafly and you're a traitor to your sex, basically. So that same mentality, that same analysis and gender critique is being used by the transgender community. So what the transgender community says is that, no, we are the gender minority.
Right.
And we are the oppressed class, and now females are keeping us out of the spaces where we belong. They also say that because I feel like a woman, believe I'm a woman, you have no right to tell me what my experience dictates, and that truth is anything other than my experience, because look at what feminism was built upon.
Yep.
Truth, reality is a construction of your experience, and women's experience is sacrosanct. It doesn't matter what external authority there is. If it contradicts feminist experience, and by that we mean collective experience of oppression, then it is de facto false. It's automatically not true. You throw it out as something oppressive. And this is what we saw, especially with feminist theologians like Rosemary Radford Ruther, Elizabeth Schussler Fiorenza, that were doing this theological feminist criticism. But fast forward now decades, that's exactly what transgender ideologies are doing.
Yeah.
They are the new gender minority. So now there is a new oppressor.
Right.
And the oppressor now is women. And so it's kind of devoured itself. And this is where the biblical worldview stands over all of that and says the root cause of all human oppression is sin.
Right.
Sin can happen at no matter what your gender, no matter what your feelings, no matter what your culture. Therefore, if the problem is the human heart, the solution has to address the human heart. That's not to say that there are not en masse national sins or that there are major cultural problems, but the lie of feminist theory reduced the problem of the human condition to gender.
Right.
And because of that then, and with that being the power dynamic that it's all about, it really, when I say power dynamic, you can have alarm bells going off of like Marxist thought. That's exactly what
you can see
is.
it's exactly right. It's like, it's just Marxism, just, remove
Precisely.
the classes and make it about gender. Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, and then I mean, oh my word, the things that Engels said about women or Lenin about, I mean, it followed through.
Right.
That's why true critical, gender critical theory,
Mm.
if they're being honest, they're going to tell you that they have Marxist leanings or presuppositions
Sure.
because it's part and parcel.
Yeah.
So this is where the biblical worldview answers
Mm.
the problems that we're trying to fix in society.
Mm.
But if you don't have transcendent truth and you don't have transcendent objective justice, right and wrong,
Yeah.
then the only thing you're really left with is the dynamics of power.
Right.
And that is exactly what we see now,
Mm.
whether we're talking 1960s feminism
Mm.
or 2020s non-binary identity.
Mm. Wow. There's so much there. I wonder if we can kind of hitch our wagon to, not necessarily the problem, but thinking now to the answer, the solution. Let's talk a
Mm-hmm.
little bit about biblical femininity and
Mm-hmm.
masculinity. Um, Help us understand. We've talked about the sin issue, but let's talk about the roles issue that we see that comes to us from Scripture that really kind of shoots all the holes in all of these kind of
Mm-hmm.
Marxist ideologies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I probably would be what you would call a gender essentialist, but I think that gender essentialism comes from the body and the intricate and complex differences between male and female that exist. So, Abigail Favale, brilliant Catholic thinker, she wrote a book called The Genesis of Gender, and she contended that the biological self is the measure of the gendered self. My words, not hers,
Mm-hmm.
but she said a man is a biological male whose body is structured around the potential of siring life or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
of generating life, so donating genetic material.
Mm-hmm.
And then a woman is a biological female, human female,
Mm-hmm.
who whose body is structured around the potential to gestate new life. So,
Mm-hmm.
so generation and gestation.
Mm-hmm.
That the structure of the body indicates the gender that that person is. Some people don't like that because they say, well, you're just reducing it to the reproductive system. No, it's we're talking some aspects of the body that are irreducibly complex. It includes the reproductive system, that's the
Yeah.
most obvious, but the differences actually go back to the eighth week in utero
Mm-hmm.
when if the fetus is a boy, it's a baby boy, the baby boy has a surge of testosterone that develops its nascent brain, its developing infant brain,
Mm-hmm.
with it's essentially masculinizing it. And with that, it is causing that baby boy to express himself, to relate to his world, to relate into to his parents in a way that is categorically and demonstrably different from a
Mm.
baby girl. A
Interesting.
baby girl is able to, within 24 hours after birth, if she hears the cries of other babies, she starts crying.
Mm.
It bothers her that someone else is upset.
Mm.
Girls are able to spontaneously identify with the feelings of others. They're wired for connectivity, for emotional connectivity. One neuropsychiatrist said that the male brain is a machine wired for protection, and the female brain is a machine wired for connection.
Mm.
But here's the amazing thing: the neurological and the structural are in harmony. So, for instance, in a male brain, men are typically more responsive immediately to emergencies, to crises. I want to say the amygdala is larger, so it's
Mm-hmm.
like a faster response.
Right.
But with that too, males have more upper body strength,
Mm.
more lower body strength, and they are more capable of a strong burst of energy. So you have a being that is neurologically and physiologically structured to intervene when there's danger, to protect, to endure greater physical hardship. For a female, you have a neurological structure built for nurture, connection, craves harmony in relationships. And then you also have a physiological structure that is capable, down to the pelvic bone, of nurturing and gestating new life. What's remarkable, I just, it never gets old. Female bodies have more of what's called slow twitch muscle fibers. So, and we're talking like your arms and your legs, your actually just your muscles are slow twitch muscle fibers, which means that they're not as capable of that strong burst of energy. You know, women are not going to be able to sprint as fast as men.
Right.
This is also why the whole conversation of men and women's sports, it's just, it's never going to be, there's never going to be parity.
Right.
But women with the slow twitch muscle fibers, they can endure sustained, long pressure to their muscles without quitting. So what that means is that I, as a woman, am not built to pull a car by a rope, but I am built to sustain unrelenting contractions for 16 hours without quitting.
Right.
So the neurological, the physiological, it's all not only in harmony, but it's in harmony for a life-giving purpose.
Yeah. For
a life-giving, life-creating purpose. And what we as Christians who image the God, every human being images the God who made them, but we as Christians who are reconciled to the God who made us, we know that this is part of how we image him. This is part of how we reflect him. We are not only in physical reproduction, but spiritual reproduction in the cultivation of the world, whether that is of a family or a business or a church, that we are cultivating and moving forward life itself. We are part of God's design, part of his mission to bring forward that life-giving purpose. So really, it truly is life and death, light and dark. The Christian message is that the core of our gender is that we would reflect God and we would bring forward life. And what we bring forward physiologically, life in reproductive biology, that mirrors the spiritual life as well. And then on the other side, we have a culture of death, of cutting away, of amputating, of mutating through chemicals, of sterilizing, of blocking life. And that physiological amputation, block, death of the potential to bear new life or gestate new life, that mirrors the spiritual of what it is doing to people. It is utterly incongruent with the God who made the body as good and who made all of creation as good.
Yeah. You know, just coming back to the masculinity, femininity issue, you know, it does seem like, and even scripturally, you can see that some of those things are a little bit on a scale, right? You have Esau, who bears a lot of masculine traits, whereas you know, Jacob is more stays at home. He's a homebody. He doesn't have that burst of energy in his muscles. He gets that later. You have women like JL who are willing to run into an issue and solve it and be the first one to arrive. And yet, despite those, even though there can be a scale of masculinity and femininity, they never really undermine gender. Gender is the constant, you know, in all those biblical cases. And I'm curious your thoughts and your research on this. Do you find that the issue sometimes is the femininity masculinity thing, where it says, oh, I identify with the gender, even though it might just be that I have, you know, a proclivity towards, you know, I have a more muscular definition or whatever. I mean, there's some women that are going to be far faster than a majority of the men in the world, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So two things. One, with transgender ideologies, it it robs people of their individual gifts and inclinations, and instead it reduces them, ironically, to a gender binary
Right.
of
Right.
of saying, "Oh, you're a guy who likes to cook and read and enjoys art. Well, that's very feminine.
Yeah.
You're sensitive and cry easily. Oh,
Right.
well, that's very feminine.
Right.
You're more of a girl than you are a boy."
Right.
It looks at a young woman and says, "You don't like wearing dresses. You don't like wearing makeup.
Right.
You're more assertive."
Yeah.
Well, maybe you're actually a boy in a girl's body. And with that, now we reduce people to these types,
Yes.
as opposed to saying, and I'll borrow from Elisa Childers,
Hmm.
your body determines your gender.
Right.
So within that, there are all kinds of ways that you can express being a man or a woman,
Yeah.
that are completely in accordance with God's design.
Right.
I would say, and this would take a lot more data and study, which the nature of it would be subjective, but can both men and women be courageous? Yes.
Right.
Does that courage express itself differently in different situations, maybe even according to the maleness or
Right.
femaleness of the person?
Right.
Yes, it
Right.
does.
Right.
The virtue is still there. The
Yeah.
expression of it can be
Yeah.
different. I am of the belief that the best way to approach biblical womanhood
Hmm.
is to say, my biblical womanhood, I'm fulfilling what God designed for me as a woman when I am walking according to God's commands in all of my life and relationships. And when I do that,
Hmm.
because the influence of biology
Hmm.
is so ever present, I believe that I'm going to express and fulfill God's design for me in biblical womanhood. And then the
Hmm.
converse would be true of men.
Hmm.
I think we make it way complicated. Like there's some things that are not complicated that I'm sure we would agree.
Right.
An elder is a biblically qualified man. Scripture makes that very clear.
Right.
There are some relationships, Ephesians 5, the relationships and callings of marriage,
Hmm.
that are different for a husband and a wife. But beyond that, it is about godliness and Christ-likeness. And I believe that the pull of the biological differences down to the cellular level will cause us to express
Hmm.
masculinity and femininity
Hmm.
in a way that is not trying to box in, not trying to say your activities, you must enjoy these
Right.
activities,
Right.
but
Cultural
rather
things. Yeah.
you're relating to people though, even if you are kind of more of a, let's say you're a sensitive, artsy guy, you are still relating to men as a man. You are still relating to women as a man.
Right.
And so there it is, your relationships.
Yeah.
Honor and glorify God in all of his commands and then all of your relationships. I think the rest of it just works itself out.
We're talking about something at a completely different level. I mean, when you get to scripture, kind of what we're talking about with roles, masculinity, femininity. I mean, it feels like it's so far from, being a believer and talking about male headship and, the way that God has designed certain things. Sounds like there's the TERF for the JK Rowlings out there. There's what would the acronym be for someone who believes in male headship and not the problem though. And we can go down this track if you want, but it's like you have the sort of Joel Webbins and these types of guys out there who are promoting this. It's not male headship. It's like male dominance. Through a pseudo biblical world view that they've created, it's like walking in the tension between all this as a believer who's trying to live according to the way that God has created us, not being overly influenced by the culture and the society that we live in. It's a tenuous position to be in. How do we do? How do we get it? How do we do it? It's.
No, you're exactly right. You're exactly right, because you may find that someone is saying something that, I agree with this, but why can I not be fully on board? And you start
Right.
listening more and hear, oh my word, what that type of idea seems to be saying, it's not the denial of the differences, it's the denial of the ontology.
Right.
And this is where Genesis 1 and 2, we cannot take our foot off of that. We just have to keep that ever present before us. What Genesis 1 demonstrates is, so you've got people created in God's image, and so far all you know about them is that, like other living things, they are sexually reproducing. There's a male one and a female one. That's all you know. They've both at this point been given the same mission, the same task. They're both given the same assignment to fill the earth, subdue it, rule over it. When you get to Genesis 2, it is fascinating to me that when Moses describes the creation of woman, the Lord could have created the woman out of anything. Could have created her out of dust. Could have created her out of a tree. Didn't. Created her out of the man. Now, what is he saying with that? So that's didactic. He's saying that she is of the same stuff as the man. She is of him, like him, standing face to face in front of him. So that's their connecto language, the connecto corresponding to. She is in every way like him, but not the same as him, different from him. So, and this is, of course, unlike any other created thing. So this is the opposite extreme that denies the ontological equality. If she is of him, that means that the only way she could be malformed, intellectually deficient, spiritually incapable, is if he is.
Right.
That's the only way.
Right.
The only way that he could insult her would be to insult himself.
Right.
And if we keep that, it keeps us from these two extremes. And my dad would tell me growing up, extremes beget extremes. And I think that's what we're seeing all the time. We're seeing just pendulum swings after pendulum swings. And this is where Genesis 1 and 2, it'll keep us from both of those ditches, from going on the side too far. Yeah.
Oh, very helpful. Your book's been out for a little while now. What's been the reader response? Is it, do you have a lot of hate mail, or is it just all positive, mix of both?
Amazingly no hate mail, thankfully. I think people see that it's a religious book or a Christian book. People that are going to be antagonistic towards it already know that I don't want to read that.
Right.
It's the response has been just wonderful. So kind. People have been so kind. I think the most meaningful one was a young woman who emailed saying that it helped her in her journey to find peace within her created identity as a woman. That was
wonderful.
Just a gift of the Holy Spirit to even get to hear that. And so I'm very grateful for how the Lord has used it. I end up telling people there's limits in how I can serve you. I'm not a pastor. I'm not a counselor. I'm not even a mom. I am someone who has time to go down the rabbit hole of information and present it in a way that is digestible. And so, it's been a lot of opportunity more to serve other believers who are walking through these questions. But I'll tell you what, Jonathan, I turned in that manuscript, and about a month later, it seemed to be out of date because there's something every month. There's something new.
That's true. I had some friends on recently who said they were writing in 2023 and about information technology, and they thought, Chat GPT was just an infant. And they said, now we need to write a whole book on artificial intelligence. Katie, you had mentioned when you started, getting into this, you felt like you had kind of a pinky full, a thimble full of information on the. So in the process of writing and researching and pulling all this in, were there some key insights, something that really kind of surprised you as you were beginning to kind of unwrap and unfold all the arguments and look at all the research?
So certainly the neurological differences between male and female. When you get into that, people tend to find what they're looking for. You'll hear a whole segment of researchers call it junk science, and then you have also researchers say no, it's really verifiable. I mean, there's not a male brain and a female brain. There's different strengths and tendencies, but just how fascinating that is, and just how truly irreducibly complex we really are, fearfully and wonderfully made. And then I think the other thing, and I'm always struck by this when I'm reminded by it, it is a fundamentally incoherent movement that measures people according to their feelings of whether they feel male or female, and reduces that to how people feel about explicit gender expressive activities. So, for instance, one website called I think it's called the Gender Bible. I write about this in the book. And it tells men, if you're wondering if you're trans, first of all, if you're wondering if you could be trans, you probably are, because so-called cisgender people don't even have this question.
Right.
But if you're curious about it, you should paint your nails and shave your legs and see how you feel. And if you like that, then yeah, maybe you actually are trans. And so you're reducing womanhood to what? Shaved legs and nail polish?
Right.
And
yeah, where there might be male cultures where they do that in another part of the world. Do you see what I'm saying?
That's a fabulous point.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, you go to a different culture and gender expressions can differ. But what Deborah So, who is not a conservative, definitely not a Christian, says, yes, gender expressions will differ, but there's still only two. There's always a binary.
Right.
It's another one. Here's another one where it's just really, truly fundamentally incoherent. People have been racing to try to find a brain-based cause of gender dysphoria. They're trying to find down to I'm not going to pronounce it correctly, but the hypothalamus and the interstitial nucleus 3 something and whatever.
Better than I would say.
All of these brain researchers have been trying to devote themselves to find what part of the brain controls gender identity. Well, ask yourself, why does an entire ideology that separates the self from the body need a brain-based evidentiary reason to back up a feeling of gender identity? You've just told us it has nothing to do with the body.
Right.
Well, then why do you need it? Why do you need
the body to
a
validate
biological
it?
reason?
Yeah.
Exactly. The entire that entire initiative, and it's a whole community of researchers. It's you're kind of telling on yourself, because you're saying that yes, reality should correspond to biology.
Right.
That is an instinctive, created, common grace, natural law, whatever you want to call it, aspect of our humanities, that we recognize that reality is not something we can construct. It does have to correspond to truth.
Absolutely. You're busy. You're working on so many things. Tell us a little bit about the Identity Project and how this can equip churches and individuals as they engage on issues like this. Because obviously, as our listeners are hearing, you are very well read and understand the issue at a much deeper level than the average, mom and dad sitting in the car listening to this. So tell us a little bit about Identity Project.
Identity Project has dozens of contributors, subject matter experts across a wide range of identity-related conversations. So you can go online at, I think it's identityproject.tv, and it's free for everybody. Donors have made it free. An incredible gift to the church. You can sit down and in an hour get almost a playlist of different topics, whether it's gender, pornography, parenting, even some things related to biological health, marriage, singleness, hookup culture. I've got several videos on there related to women and gender issues. If you're interested specifically in the gender conversation, there's different researchers on there. I want to say there's Sean McDowell, you've got John Stonestreet, Kathy Cook.
Yeah.
There's a pastor named Sam Ferguson. He's an England pastor up in DC area who does whole thing is on gender. Excellent teaching. And so you can, for any parent that is wanting to dive deeper into that, you can find it there. The other thing that's so great about it is it's not like sitting down to read a book, but in about 7 to 10 minutes, you have a grasp on a question that you're at least now conversant in.
Yeah.
You might have enough to know what to look for online.
Right.
I find that that's half my research. It's
Right.
like I spend research figuring out what I need to research, right? And then also for a parent, if a parent's walking through this, knowing what to ask a counselor, a teacher, a therapist. By going to Identity Project, you're going to be able to get kind of a sense of the landscape of what is out there and what's going on. So it may not have all the answers, but it's going to equip and arm you with the material you need to go find all those answers.
What a great resource. Tell us about Blonde Orthodoxy. I do love that name. What led you to start that, and how did that all kind of come about?
Yeah, so the website's been inactive for a bit because I just have not been able to you know how it is.
Sure.
Like, I'm not techie.
Somebody's got to do it.
I'm such an old millennial. Yeah, I need to bring the website back again. But it's my shtick. I'll go to different conferences or churches, and they'll say, "So are you online?" And I'll say, "Yes, Blonde Orthodoxy." And they laugh. And when they laugh, I know you're not going to forget it. And so
That's right.
it's just a silly thing. I did about 7 years ago now that I thought that'll just kind of be my little alter ego. I'm stuck with the hair color now.
You can't.
So
you can't,
yeah. I went strawberry blonde one time, and I was like, okay, now I'm the redheaded heretic. That's what I'll be.
Right.
So, but I couldn't stay there long. So yes, Blonde Orthodoxy. Twitter and Instagram is where I'm active.
It's, again, you're right. It does. It sticks out in your mind. What a great idea. And again, another great resource. And that's really our goal here on Candid Conversations, is to have a candid conversation, but to also make sure that our listeners are well resourced. I want to come back to a couple of questions, kind of application questions. I think the average Christian is trying to wrestle with cultural expectations and biblical truth. And it could be similar to other things we talked about. It can be difficult to kind of navigate those two things. You and I are having a conversation about something that is absolutely core to a person's identity, their gender. We want to be good biblical Christians who speak the truth, and we speak it in love. Love does not mean I ignore the truth, but I have to walk the tension out. How do you encourage your listeners, your readers, those you engage with? How do you encourage them? And you might push this back on me and say it's a pastoral issue, and I wouldn't disagree with you there. But how do you talk to young women, moms, anyone in between, about what does it look like to walk this out in the culture without becoming kind of the red-faced person who's just angry that our world looks the way it does?
Yeah. First thing we need to remember, the terms in technology are different. The deceptions are old. The deceptions go back to the Garden of Eden when the serpent said to Eve, "You're not going to die. You're going to be like God. He's holding out on you." And underneath that is the lie that you can determine the limits of your life. You can determine the boundaries of your existence. You can be like God. And effectively, that's what's happening is people are believing that there is no created authority over my life. There is no authority over my life to whom I am accountable.
Right.
I can be the creator and not the creation. And so that is kind of a bedrock foundational truth that we're confronting. This really is a worldview. It's not just kind of a side issue. It is the overflow of a very consistent, cohesive worldview about who I am as an individual, what my place in society is, what society owes me.
Yes.
And so we get into conversations about, if my identity is self-determined, then if you don't affirm my self-determined identity, then you are erasing me. And from that, we have this kind of revolutionary language that also can go back to thinkers like Wilhelm Reich. Write about that in the book too, of people who are trying to subvert what belongs to the majority culture, because in so doing, they are deconstructing the society around us, and I want to say reconstructed to something else, but really it doesn't. It's just kind of nihilism. It's just tearing things down, tearing down the foundations of the family, of society, certainly of Western civilization. And so we are combating a worldview. Now, unfortunately, where a lot of that seems to take place is on either social media or in the middle of city council and school board meetings over books in libraries. Those things, though, are worthy. Don't check your discipleship at the door, but when you get into the ideology that says, this is Wilhelm Reich again, that says parents are standing in the way of sexually liberating children,
Right.
and in so doing, subverting the sexual codes of society. That people are using sexuality as a means of revolution. Well, all of a sudden, introducing a 4-year-old to Bunny Bear, who, even though he looks like a bear and acts like a bear, he wants to be a bunny, and these mean bunnies won't let him live in their bunny home.
Yeah, and what kid
This
reading a book
4-year-old
isn't
book.
going to go, how could you do that? Right.
Yeah, exactly. All of a sudden, drag queen story hour for 3-year-olds. That's not just a side thing. It's an expression of a worldview. And so our responsibility, as Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, is to be salt and light. We are the salt. We are the moral preservatives against decay. We are light. We are pointing to the way out of darkness. We are willing to shine. That means that we are willing to be seen, to be heard. We don't do it to be seen and heard, but that we are pointing people to what is truth, knowing that the truth will set them free. One of the most amazing trends happening now, Jonathan, are atheists who are coming to Christ because they look at what they value in Western society, and they recognize that that goes back to the influence of the early church.
Sure.
And the truth is, without Christianity, you don't have freedom of conscience. You don't have care for the most vulnerable.
Right.
It was Christians who stood against poverty. It was Christians who stood against forced prostitution.
And that's being evidenced even by secular writers like Tom Holland. And it's not like the narrative is against, the Christian worldview. If anything, society and academics are actually reinforcing that those things were right and true. They don't understand the spiritual underpinnings, but they can see that the fruit that was being born was actually positive.
For some, that is a starting point. That's at least a starting point of maybe appreciation, then curiosity, then openness. And so I think there's a real opportunity to contrast the secularism of our age when you look at true secular humanism. Well, secular humanism is what produced the statement back in, I think, the 90s in Houston that here it was some 30 years ago, that they called for oh gosh, what was it called? It was a statement basically opening the door to everything that we're seeing today of gender transition, so-called, through medical means, of family creation according to whatever a person wants it to be. that is a result of secular humanism,
Yeah.
and people are seeing the results of it
Yeah.
and where it has taken us.
Yeah.
And Jesus said we'll know them by their fruit. That's not only individuals, I think that's ideas. You
Yeah.
see the fruit of ideas.
The more I think about it, the more I think that question could be a little bit too broad about how do we engage, because I think
Mhm.
the way that I'm going to engage with an individual who comes into my church is
Yeah.
going to be different than the way that if I stood in front of a school board, to use your example. I'm
Hmm.
going to use different language, right? These are people who are in a position that have authority, and there's certain expectations, and so I'm going to use a certain level of rhetoric and argument with them
Right.
to present my case, as opposed to an individual. I'm going to make an appeal to their heart, to their created nature, to the goodness
Hmm.
of God, to knowing and understanding the person and work of Jesus Christ. Sometimes I wonder if we conflagrate the two things
Yeah,
and
you
say
can't
you
get them
only have to
crossed.
have one or the other.
That's right.
I wonder if that's part of why we Christians disagree with each other over a lot of these things, and maybe it needs a little bit more of the nuancing. Let's say there's a young girl in the church who's having a gender identity issue. She's dealing with massive confusion. Her mom and her dad are confused. They don't know what to do. They're coming to you because you've written a lot about this, and maybe you're a member of their church, and they're going to say, we've talked to the pastor. He told us to come talk to you. But what are some of the things you're going to talk to her about? How do you engage on a heart level? Because I'm guessing some of our listeners are going to know some people. There's going to
Hmm.
be some points of connectivity. There's kids who are just genuinely, they really don't know what to do. The school's saying one thing, home is saying
Hmm.
another, church is saying a third thing, possibly at the same time. How do we help them navigate these roads?
Yeah, first, I would recommend it's certainly the teenager needs counseling, but I would bring the whole family in on that to help the family grow with that young woman. But the first thing I would do is ask a lot of questions,
Mm-hmm.
because what you have to figure is that especially if she is in a public school,
Right.
um, she is not having anybody ask questions. She's maybe all of a sudden getting all this positive attention. Like she went from a nobody to a hero because
Right.
she said she came out as gender dysphoric.
Right.
And so I would ask a lot of questions like, when did this start? What were you feeling before? Kind of
Mm.
thing. The overwhelming majority of especially teenage girls that are all of a sudden gender incongruent or gender dysphoric, it's a symptom.
Mm-hmm.
It's a side effect of something else that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what Lisa Littman found back in, I want to say 2013. She found that, first of all, peer contagion, it's the influence of other people.
Yeah.
Now, that peer contagion can be she's on her phone and parents allowed her to have her phone, or she figured out how to get past parental controls and she's been on Instagram and TikTok and
Mm-hmm.
been listening to all of these trans influencers.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be a friend that's gender confused, and so that type of idea, those beliefs and behaviors get spread.
Mm.
Teenage girls co-ruminate. We co-ruminate to the point of, I don't like this person because you don't like this person. That's the extent of it.
Yeah.
But it's that relational identification. So teenage
Mm.
girls especially are vulnerable to that.
Mm.
It can be a coping mechanism, was the other thing Littman found, that it could be she's struggling in school, she had a breakup, friends don't like her anymore,
Mm.
she feels uncomfortable going through puberty.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the biggest deceptions, telling these girls, if you don't enjoy going through puberty, maybe you're in the quote unquote wrong puberty.
Gosh.
And who enjoyed
Who
puberty?
enjoyed
It's
it,
awful.
right?
That's right. But it could be abuse, but
Mm.
you don't need to have five alarm fire over that.
Mm-hmm.
Ask questions. You don't need to start there of thinking that your
Mm.
child is
Straight away, yeah.
being harmed. Right,
Yeah.
right. It can be something as comparatively mild as her grades are struggling, she's sick, parents get divorced.
Mm-hmm.
It could be something more serious like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so what children are doing in their child's mind is they're getting positive attention. And that doesn't mean they're acting. It means they're redirecting.
Yeah.
And they're getting the type of care that they need. So it's kind of a cry for help. But they're kids. They don't know that. They don't know that. That's
Yeah.
why they need adults in the room
Right.
to help guide them. If it were my daughter, I would not indulge in any type of transition, not medical, hormonal, or social.
Yeah.
If she wants to be called by a nickname, I might concede that,
Yeah.
but I'm not calling her by a boy's name.
Right.
Here's why. Social transition is a one-way train. Once a child's or any person socially transitions and they are relating to someone according to a different gender, that is reinforcing a view of who they are. And then shortly thereafter, they go on puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones. So really, it's a gateway drug. Don't do the social transitioning. If she wants to wear different types of clothes, I mean, it would be, probably dependent on the child, but I just would not indulge. I would not use preferred pronouns. No way, no how. Preferred pronouns are also just one of these slippery slope things. But not only that, preferred pronouns, if we're just thinking theologically, what is it when someone wants to use preferred pronouns? What they're saying is that despite everything that exists, I am going to create reality
Yeah.
according to my will
Yeah.
and by my words.
Right.
Well, who can create reality according to his will and by his words?
God.
God alone. And so again, it goes back to Genesis. It's like, no,
Yeah.
you don't have the authority to create reality by your words or according to your will. We are creations and we receive our created identity. Social media, I would keep kids off the phone. We have yet to see the damage that is being done to Gen Z growing up so connected to social media and their phones. And then just other things that I've read, parents talk about it like rescuing their child from a cult. And that really is what it is because children get indoctrinated at
It's
schools.
a brainwash. Yeah.
They probably need to be pulled out of school, homeschool if you can. I know I say that a mom could hear that and be horribly overwhelmed, and I'm sorry. But so often these things are being introduced and introduced at school, encouraged at school. One girl eventually came to realign with the created identity that God gave her, but she said that she was non-binary to her Christian family, and it happened overnight. And her public school in California, when she expressed her view that there's only two genders, very brave thing for a young woman to do in California, they didn't cancel her. They invited her to a club. They won her over. They changed her mind. And they eventually, one of the best things that they did not do the preferred pronouns either. The mom said, I now have to choose between offending you and offending God. And I think that is, whether it's a family member, a church member, or someone that we just meet, we're going to have to choose between offending a person and offending God. Now, I think there is a lot more momentum behind people sticking to their consciences. However, that's swung the opposite direction, as you've noted. It can be belligerent. It can be overtly offensive, as opposed to, on the basis of conscience, out of honoring the God I serve. Here's the boundary for who I am as a Christian. This is my identity, and it is as important to me as your gender identity is to you.
Right.
So we will have to offend people, but not be offensive. So that's what I would tell parents. And then I would also let parents know that, and again, people are becoming more wise to this, but the manipulation that can happen to parents to try to twist their arm into treatments and procedures that they otherwise would at least want a second opinion, by telling their child, well, if you don't do this, you're going to be causing them to be suicidal. Well, suicide itself is a pure contagion. If you tell a vulnerable, emotionally struggling 14-year-old, if your parents don't affirm your gender identity, you could become suicidal. what's going to
Yeah,
happen?
planted the
You've
seed.
planted the
Yeah,
seed.
yeah.
Exactly. And so just recognizing parents are going to have to be vigilant over who is speaking into their child's identity. And then also recognize that parents have, I would say, an outsized influence in their child's self perception, gender identity, how they relate to themselves in the world and other people. So don't give up, and do not give 1 inch of ground over to the world on that. That is your child. And the Lord entrusted that child to you, not to their school, not to the government, not to their doctor.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Katie McCoy, her most recent book is To Be a Woman, The Confusion Over Female Identity and How Christians Can Respond. Thank you so much for taking the time and talking about a number of topics with us. Katie, thank you so much for taking the time to be on Candid Conversations.
Thanks for having me, Jonathan.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for listening to Candid Conversations. If you found today's discussion helpful, please share it with a friend. And don't forget to fill out the Candid Listener Survey using the link in our show notes. Your feedback helps us bring you the conversations that you want and need. I'm Jonathan Youssef. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time with more candid biblical insights.